Hey everyone, I'm Carey Pena. Thank you so much for listening. Today we have Jane McCann in the studio, and she has an incredible story to share with us. Jane, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Today we're going to talk about your journey to being mindful, and it transformed your life, you say. How did it first come about?
Well, it first came about 10 years ago when I had a cesarean section with my son, and I had a reaction to the medication. So subsequently what happened is when I went to have my second son, I knew that the medication that I'd had, the epidural, was not, it just wasn't available for me.
So you were going to have natural birth?
No question. There was no choice.
Now, did I read in the notes that you sent me that you were in birth for 30-some hours?
35 hours, yes. It does sound bad, but most of it I did at home. I did go into the hospital to actually give birth, but I went in at the end of birthing, and it was even though it was a long time, I'd never ever experienced as much control as I'd had at that time.
So that experience defined for you a moment when you sort of learned to be mindful. And how was that?
Yeah, it was that moment. And after I'd given birth, I remember feeling I couldn't believe it was over. And it took me a while after that to understand and realize what I was missing. And obviously I didn't want another baby, and I certainly didn't want to have childbirth again. You know, that would be ridiculous.
But you were seeking something.
Yes, and what I realized was the control that I had in my life.
The mental control.
Yes, and I don't think I'd ever experienced that type of control in my life before. And once I gave birth, I gave up the mindfulness, and then I started to lose control in my life again. And then it was the penny dropped. It was the mindfulness, and I needed to bring it back into my life.
And so I'm very curious how this has applied to you with your children. So your son has ADHD, and he was diagnosed at what age?
He was diagnosed at age 7.
How did you guys come to figure out that he had ADHD?
We were told from preschool age that, you know, he was a little different. We always knew he was super smart, so it was a little surprising to us, but we always felt and knew that he was a little different from the other children.
But in what way?
You couldn't make him interested in things he wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
He was curious in things that he was curious in.
Yeah.
But you couldn't change his focus to be curious or interested in things that he just wasn't interested in. Mm-hmm. He just didn't have the focus in something he didn't want to be
Which presents problems when you're in school. Correct.
It does. And I had 2 sons, and my other son, we saw none of this. Mm-hmm. It was very different.
So at what point, because I'm always curious, I think it's beautiful to see a variety of children in different personality forms. And at what point then do you say we might need to go seek professional help?
We never did. At like preschool, 1st grade, 2nd grade, his 1st grade teacher, who was absolutely wonderful with me, I think I spent every morning in her classroom crying because I had so much fear in me as where is he going to go? What is he going to do? How are we going to get through this? How am I going to fix this? Mm-hmm. And it was when we got him into 2nd grade, it was the realization, okay, we've got to do something. The first thing his 2nd grade teacher told me as I walked into her classroom was, you know what, he's a lovely kid, but he's out in left field. I can't do anything with him, which was devastating.
Sure.
It was really devastating. And of course, at that time, I was so emotional and so fearful of his future. Yeah. Is he going to go to college? Is he going to get through school? Is he going to get through 2nd grade?
Right.
And that fear just took over my body. And then it was, I had to deal with the fear before I could really help him. Dealing with the emotion, the fear, and try and get some intelligence built up around that for me. And then it took me right back to my mindfulness. I already know these skills. I already have these skills. So why aren't I using them now?
So essentially you had to sort of, for yourself, calm your mind down.
Correct. I had to get some emotional intelligence around this, and I had to deal with the fear. The fear just took me over. It was like somebody was wringing out my stomach, and I really had to get a grip of that.
So many people face that for a variety of reasons. Fear and anxiety, it can be so crippling.
Yes, and I felt that at that moment, at that time, I was going to make decisions that I didn't want to make because I was driven by the fear of what is going to become of his life, rather than looking at this 7-8-year-old little boy and thinking, there's nothing wrong with him. He's wonderful. He plays, he sings in the shower, he dances, he's a little nuts, he's a little crazy, he rides his bike. Yes, exactly. But I couldn't see any of that. It went for that moment, for that time. And subsequently all I did was dump that on him, because he would become more and more anxious because I was anxious.
And so at what point did you and your husband or your family have to sit down and talk about whether or not medication would be an option?
We went to the pediatrician. She straight off the bat gave him amphetamine-based medication. And at that time, we were, okay, we've got to fix this. We've got to deal with this. We've got to fix this. And when my husband went to pick up the prescription, the pharmacist said to him, do you know about this medication? Do you know what it is? Do you know the side effects of it? And my husband was, no, I don't know a lot other than what my wife has told me. Mm-hmm. So the pharmacist took time to go through it and talk about the side effects. And the side effects just went on and on and on.
What were some of the side effects?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the side effects for amphetamine-based ADHD medication, there's 286 known side effects to ADHD medication. But that study has only just come out. Mm-hmm. So, but at the time, it was... the things that I remembered was sleeping, his sleep habits. And my son had always been a very good sleeper. Mm-hmm. Eating, he would be suppressed. Mm-hmm. It may not work for everybody. They just seem to go on. They do go on. There's 286 side effects. For the life of me, I can't remember what they are right now, mm-hmm. but they do go on, and they're very real. Side effects are very real.
I think that you make a great point, because a lot of times, myself included, you don't always ask enough questions. I had some flare-up on my skin for which I was prescribed this medication. I didn't ask any questions. I took the medication and I had horrendous side effects. I had to be hospitalized and use an EpiPen. But I take full responsibility for the fact that I didn't even stop to ask. I just wanted the redness gone from my face. And so I didn't protect my own health and well-being by asking those questions. And for our children, we need to protect them and at least ask. And then if you see the side effects and think, okay, it's worth it, it outweighs the condition that this child has, then that makes sense. But for you guys, it scared you.
It scared us enough to say this wasn't for us. However, we also believe, and we believe this strongly, that doesn't mean you don't do anything. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you just don't do the medication and then that's it. It's just send him to school every day and everything's going to be good. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to do something because you have a very different child.
And it's tough for the teachers, even though that is a tough thing for you as a parent to hear a teacher say, there's not a lot we can do. Yes. But boy, I feel for the teachers, because when you've got 25 kids in your class and a couple of them you can never wrangle in, it can be a ripple effect.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the teachers that he'd had in his life were phenomenal, not just with him, but with educating me with what they knew. So I have so much gratitude for the teachers, but the teachers are over a barrel. You know, they have 25 kids in the class if they're lucky.
Right.
You know,
right.
So they also, you have to be involved. And we'd made the decision, okay, so if we have to go in every day and sit with him, if we have to do whatever we have to do for a period of time to get him over this hump.
So tell me, what did you do?
Well, we continued to get him tested, and we found out that, and what we found out since, so we found out that he is actually dyslexic. One of the symptoms of dyslexia is ADHD. As we know ADHD at the moment, the recent research that has come out about ADHD at the moment, as it stands, now research is being done all the time, so this could change, but the latest research indicates that ADHD is a side effect to something else, meaning it could be autism, it could be dyslexia, it could be environmental, you know, the kid might be just bored, it could be food, diet, it could be any number of things. But at the moment, it is believed from research that ADHD is a side effect to something else. So I put myself on a mission to find out
what was that something else.
Correct. What is the deeper issue here?
When I booked you for the show, I did some research, and according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 11% of children aged 4 to 17, that's an estimated 6.4 million, have been diagnosed with ADHD. This is as of 2011. These were the most recent stats I could find, so I'm sure that those have gone up. 6.4 million children,
yes.
And the numbers in recent years have gone up dramatically. So what you're saying to me really makes sense, that it is a side effect of potentially all of these other things that have manifested in our kids.
Yes, that's exactly right. Trauma can be a big side effect to ADHD as well. Any child that's been through and trauma is different for everyone, you know, so sometimes you may never get to the bottom of why a child has ADHD, but I do want to be clear and say ADHD is real. You know, I'm not saying, I would never say that it's not real. I live with it, you know, and it is real. And if you choose not to medicate, doesn't mean you don't do anything. I would always say, you know, look to see what else is going on, which is what we did with our son. We found out he was dyslexic, you know, and once we found out that he was dyslexic, it was so obvious he was dyslexic. You know, you could see it, but of course we weren't experts in dyslexia or ADHD for that matter.
Right.
So, you know, always seeking an expert and finding out and looking into it. And once we found out that the root of the cause was dyslexia, then we started targeting that.
And then did the ADHD lessen?
You know, the ADHD is still there. It has not lessened. He still has ADHD. I still believe he'll have it at 50. However, what he has learned through mindfulness is he has learned about what his brain does, how his brain reacts, and he has learned to self-regulate. Still learning, I should say. It's a work in process. He's learning how to self-regulate. He learns about his moods. He learns about what he can do, what he can't do. And one thing that he's realized about himself is he doesn't like to be controlled. He doesn't like to be told what to do. So he has to learn how to control himself so that he can make his own choices.
Because sometimes you are going to have to be in an environment where you're told what to do, whether it's in school or on the job, whatever.
That is
part of life.
That's exactly right. So trying to set him up for success and say, listen, you have to learn to control yourself in these situations and just empower him in a different way.
Well, I've become fascinated. Mindfulness is not new.
Correct.
But the organization you work with has now started working in a lot of schools and teaching mindfulness to children. And it's a lot of what you're saying, learning how to self-regulate, which can cut down on bullying and the stress and anxiety that these kids, so many of them, feel when they arrive at school, especially kids who come from homes that there's problems in the home. If they hear fighting or abuse, whatever it is, stress. I mean, I think mindfulness now has become something a lot more accepted, not some sort of witchcraft kind of side treatment.
I agree with you, and we're working in a school at the moment in Phoenix where there is a lot of children that come from war-torn countries, and they've ended up in these schools, and these children are so traumatized from their upbringing and what they've been through, things that we can only imagine.
Right.
That we don't even want to imagine. But these children have got to have tools, because trauma can really create a blockage in learning. So we need to strengthen their brains.
You're talking about that, and just before we started taping the show, I was talking with my producer Shannon about an image that today has gone viral of a little boy who was in Aleppo. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw it, yes.
And his house was bombed, and that image, but it made me think about that. Kids who have to go through things we couldn't ever imagine. We only have 1 minute left. I still have a lot more I wish I could ask you about. But just in closing, tell me what you think mindfulness has done for your son and overall for your family.
Self-regulation is to have a lot more control within the household. There's no screaming and shouting. That doesn't mean I'm the perfect mother all the time.
Right.
But you can tone everything down. You can self-regulate. Everybody has to self-regulate within the family. It's giving back control in the family.
And give people the information where they can find out more about your organization.
Yes, we're at Mindfulness First, and we're mindfulnessfirst.org.
And so when people come in to learn how to become more mindful, where do you begin?
We have starter classes at our center. We have a center where we're putting on classes all the time.
And do you just start to teach people to understand their own emotions?
Yes, we start with the core knowledge, and then it starts off with a little bit at a time.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. I still can't quite get over that you were in labor for 35 hours. And it was a beautiful experience, though, you say. I mean, but bravo. And I'm so glad that your son is doing well and flourishing.
Yes, thank you. I won't want to do it again, but yes. Thank
we
you.
live and we learn.
I know, right?
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for listening and for watching our new live stream. You can see the show on my Facebook page at Carey Pena or on our site, inspiredmedia360.com. And be sure to subscribe so you stay in the loop. And we always love your feedback. Today's show produced and engineered by Shannon Hernandez, brought to you by Inspired Media 360. Until next time, stay inspired.